This week on the Orange Box podcast, we talk about the mass layoffs happening with Microsoft, Perfect Dark and Everwild being canceled, Nintendo getting sued, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to that beautiful bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 91. I am your host, the man who is slowly recovering from GJRS, game journalist Reflex's syndrome, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man who has the eyes of a black cat and the ears of a fox, Justin, better known as I Am Zaracon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
Weekend was very good, I'll say. Saturday, my niece had her dance recital, so I went to see that. She had 3 separate dances this year, so that was good on that end. And then afterwards, we went to my sister's house just to celebrate. My brother-in-law was grilling up some food, so that was a good time. He cooked a lot of stuff, more than I anticipated, so I sort of had to start and stop eating throughout the day just because just when I thought he had finished grilling all the different things, he brought out something new. So I was like, oh, okay, we're going to do that then. So yeah, definitely spent some time there. You know, my niece and nephew, they enjoyed it. We played outside. They went in a pool for a bit. They also pulled out the foam swords I bought them for their birthday a few years ago, so they also enjoyed using that. They also got me into it, so we were having some duels outside as well. Then spent the night there, did some gaming with them because I brought my Steam Deck over, which I'll discuss in a little bit there. But it was a pretty relaxing weekend overall. Still working though on my PC. I definitely did the recommendations that you mentioned, especially like seating stuff, especially like the RAM and whatnot, and also updating the BIOS, and then also trying to do a few other things. And unfortunately, it's still acting weird, and the fact that I can't even like boot into anything or even try to use just a live session from a USB drive really leads me right now to believe that it could be the motherboard, because I'm fairly certain it's not the GPU, because I've switched out the GPU. That's fine. I mean, or at least the same problem happens, I should say. The RAM doesn't seem to be an issue from what I've seen, and everything else seems fine. And considering the fact that initially a while ago I had an issue with the motherboard before the PC was working, or at least I had issues with the PC, it really leads me to believe that it could be the motherboard at this point, in which case I'll have to get a new one, which is kind of a bummer, but not, I mean, of course, because, you know, having to buy new hardware, but just because I really don't want to have to put this thing again, just because it's a mini ITX motherboard. Like, the case only fits mini ITX, and that
Gotcha.
it was a pain trying to get all those like pins in there, so I don't look forward to doing that. But it looks like I'll just have to do it at this point. But it is what it is. I'm not gonna stress out too much over that. And then lastly, I guess I'll just say, this week at work has just been very fast-paced and hectic, or at least more so than usual, because it's the first week of a new month, so that's normally our busiest time. But also because of the fact that we have, you know, Independence Day coming up. Well, I guess as of the upload today, you know, that's a day off for us, so we have to essentially do double time. All the stuff which we would do on a Friday is being stretched out throughout the week, and then also having to do prep work for weekend stuff as well as Monday stuff has just been very very tense. So we're halfway through there, at least, just one day more for the work week, but the final day is gonna be something. I'll say. But yeah, that's essentially everything that has happened so far.
One thing I was wondering about is, I mean, it shouldn't matter, because I think with GPUs it usually doesn't matter, but do you know if there's an issue with... Well, I guess first of all, actually, something that just popped in my head. Do you know for sure that your power supply is strong enough to handle the new GPU?
It definitely should be fine. In fact, out of curiosity, I looked up the power draw, and it's actually slightly less than my old GPU.
Okay.
Which is interesting.
Okay. Yeah, the other thing I was thinking of, like I said, probably wouldn't be affected by a GPU, because I think it's more of a CPU issue, and that is making sure that the motherboard is actually compatible with it. But realistically, I'm pretty sure that's only when you're doing CPUs, when you upgrade those, that you have to make sure your motherboard is compatible, because usually GPUs, it's less of an issue. But I don't know. Either way, at least motherboards aren't terribly expensive. It's just, obviously, you know, the small compact thing on a mini board would be a pain. One thing that, I don't know if you already have done this, that was really helpful for me when I was putting together my PC last time, is you can get like these shell things that lets you put like the power and reset button pins on it. It's like a little plastic casing basically that holds it in place, so you don't have to try to get those in just perfect by yourself. If you don't have something like that, get one, because it makes it so much easier to get it plugged in.
Yeah, I'll definitely immediately after the podcast look that up, because that has been a struggle, to the point where I essentially have to pick and choose what I plug in, just because whenever I try to plug one pin in, another one gets disconnected.
Right.
And yeah, so I'll definitely
if you get one of those, it's a game changer. It's like, I wish I had discovered it years prior and I didn't. It's like, that makes such a huge difference, because all you have to do, because you put them in and then they clip into that thing, and then you just plug that in directly, and you don't even have to deal with the headaches of trying to get those little tiny pins in just perfect. So much easier that way. But either way, I hope that the motherboard ends up being the solution to your problem, and that there's nothing else. So, all right. Well, my week has been very interesting. So, of course, you know, Thursday, pretty standard, you know, work from home, got the podcast put together, got packed and all that. And so Friday we left. We were able, I think we got out about 5:30 in the morning, which was great. You know, got out at a good time, got on the road, and we took a back route, because usually, like, we have to take, I think we get up to like around Kansas City, and then we're taking like I-70 up to Kansas City, and then we're taking I-80 the majority of the way, all the way over to Wyoming, going through like Nebraska and stuff. And it's just like going on those major highways, there's just a ton of traffic, well, I should say a ton of truck traffic, and, you know, dealing with the big rigs and everything like that. It's just, neither one of us really like driving that. I mean, it's not terrible, but it wasn't ideal. So we decided to take a back route this time, which was a much more pleasant drive, a lot less traffic. We basically, until we got onto I-80, which we didn't even have to do until I think when we got to Laramie, because we went through Kansas and then through Colorado, and then up into Laramie, Wyoming, and then just took I-80 from there to Rock Springs. The drive itself, like, the roads were great, the weather wasn't bad, basically, you know, no like major storms or anything like that. It's definitely going to be the way we take every time going forward, because it only adds a tiny bit of time to the trip, like maybe 30 minutes, if that. And it's, you know, altogether, it's basically 2 days of driving. It's a total of about 16 hours. We typically will do like 10 to 10 and a half hours the first day, and then the remaining amount the second day. However, 2 hours into our first day of driving, our AC stopped working. And, you know, there have been times where it's like, okay, you know, it shuts off, and I mean, you know, we've had a couple times where it has shut off, and then we just have to like turn it off for a little bit, turn it back on, and then it's fine. You know, Let me try turning it off and on again. Unfortunately, that didn't work. And so we had to spend the majority of the time driving with the windows open, which the air is only so cool. I mean, like most of the time it was more hot air, but it was still better than running the air inside the car because it was much hotter air. And yeah, it was pretty miserable from that standpoint. Thankfully, the second day wasn't quite as bad because we were mostly driving early in the morning, so it was cooler air coming in. But it's just, when you have the windows open, when you're driving at really high, you're driving at 70, 80 miles an hour, it's just not real pleasant to drive that way because of the noise and everything. And, of course, obviously, then on top of that, we're just all hot and sweaty. I mean, it's just uncomfortable, basically, the whole way. So I thought about it after the first day. I thought, well, maybe it's a issue, like the fuse went out, like the fuse burnt out, and I just need to pull it out, replace it. It didn't occur to me until we were about, I don't know, 8-9 hours into the drive. But I checked it, and I didn't have the tool I needed in order to do it, so I couldn't do it that day. I found out the next day through talking to some people when I was trying to get a hold of some pliers, thinking that that's what I would need, that there actually is a special tool that's in most cars after a certain point. And keep in mind, before this, the only car I had ever had to do anything with fuses on was a 98 Toyota Sienna. So I didn't know that the little clip thing existed. And I couldn't find it initially in the fuse box that had the AC fuse. And so I just ended up kind of jimmying it out with my keys. Checked it. Nope, wasn't burnt out. Checked a couple others. Nope, everything's fine. And then when I checked some of the fuses under the hood, then I found the clip, and it's like, oh, okay, this makes it a lot easier to pull out the fuses. So I'll have that for future reference. So we made it to Wyoming Sunday afternoon, and then Saturday afternoon. And we were able to get the car in to get looked at today. And initially they thought, oh, it's the relay that hooks up to the compressor, which is not very expensive to replace. It's like $25 to replace that, and then just fill up the Freon and labor. I don't know what it would have been altogether, but I would guess not more than like $100 for the total repair cost. But it turns out that the compressor itself had seized up because of the lack of the Freon in there, which is the what's used to cool it for the air conditioning. Same thing that's used in refrigerators. And so it was a lot more expensive to fix. Thankfully, it did fix the problem. They replaced the compressor, they refilled the Freon, and everything's working great now. It was just a very expensive repair, but it's like, well, I'd rather spend that money to get it repaired and have AC for our trip back, which will make it much more pleasant, than not have AC. It's just no brainer, So yeah, that was a interesting experience from that standpoint. I mean, otherwise, the trip was fine. It's just, unfortunately, it was a lot less pleasant because of how hot we were the whole time. So, and it was, like in the 90s most of the time we were driving, so it was just not pleasant. 90s and humid. But it is what it is. Apart from that, let's see here. Not a whole lot has been going on. I was able to bring like my microphone with me, as you can see, and my desk setup. I actually ended up ordering a standing desk converter that I could use while we were here, because I knew that it was going to be hard for me to sit down the entire time that I'm working, because it's kind of my work area is kind of cramped. Like, I have a folding table as the main one where I keep the monitors and my computer and stuff. And then I have like a little, really old desk that I think was my wife's when she was a kid. Or a teenager or whatever. And but it's just kind of like a very small enclosed area. And so it's just not super comfortable. I mean, it's in our bedroom, but it's still just like a little cramped. So I ordered a standing desk converter, which I'm very glad I did. Thankfully, it got here on Monday. And I was able to get that all set up, and it's very, very helpful. And the nice thing about it is that I mean, of course, I'll obviously just be using it when I'm here. I'm not taking it with me. It's staying here because I have a standing desk at home, full on one. But then my father-in-law can use this when I'm gone. I mean, when I'm not here, so that way he can have something that's helpful for him. And yeah, it's nice having that available. Let's see here. Obviously, 4th of July, we have off. I'm going to do some grilling and stuff. I haven't figured out what all I'm making. Initially, it seemed like we might have Megan's sister and her family coming over to join us, but for various reasons, they couldn't actually join us this time. So I know I'm making burgers, and I'm making mac and cheese. And that's about the extent of what I know for sure I'm making. I haven't really thought too much about it. I might try to make some potato salad or something, but honestly, I just haven't really decided. I'll probably figure out a lot of it on Friday just because of all that. But yeah. And tomorrow, my wife and I get to do a date night, which will be fun. Unfortunately, because of how incredibly slow the internet is here, and to reference it, I rendered I took the audio recording of the sermon from my home church, which was just an audio file, made it into a video just with the title card because they couldn't record the video this week, technical issues. It took 15 hours to upload a sermon that was a little over an hour long on the internet here. And it turns out that they have DSL here, which I didn't realize anybody still had DSL. I mean, it's like, wow. I mean, I remember when I first got DSL, and it was very late when I got it, which was, 2012, I think. Because before that, I mostly had dial-up, and it was like, yeah. But yeah, actually, no, I did have DSL before that. It's just that I had much slower DSL until about 2012. And then I got a better speed. And then when I moved to Seward in Alaska, we got cable internet, which was a lot faster. And so we've been spoiled by gigabit internet for quite a while. And I don't know what the internet is here exactly, but it is... I would say it is probably around, if I had to guess, I would say like 5 megabits. I don't know if it's actually that slow, but it sure, the upload speed at least is exceedingly slow. Now, it's fast enough that at least I can do these video calls, so that's good. But downloads definitely take quite a while to do. At first I thought, oh yeah, I can just, use set up a mobile hotspot and download that way. But it turns out that unlimited data doesn't let you have unlimited data on the high speed. And so I used it to download a couple of games on my Steam Deck, doing around 20 gigs or something like that. And then I got a notification, oh, your speed's going to be reduced. You don't have any data caps, but you are going to have reduced speed. So I can't set up a mobile hotspot anymore. I can still use my connection otherwise, but yeah, so I'm a little more limited from that standpoint. I just have to deal with it. So all that being said, because of how slow it is, one of the things that my wife and I will be doing while we are out on our date is we're going to go and we're going to go up to the community college where my wife's husband, or I mean, not my wife's husband, my sister-in-law's husband, where he works, and they have gigabit Wi-Fi there. So I'll go up there. We'll go up there, get the podcast uploaded there, and if I need to do any downloads, I'll do them while we're there because much faster internet. Oh, speaking of which, that reminds me. So, I told you last week we got fiber. So because I wasn't there when they did the installation, there was some things I misunderstood about how the cable setup needed to be. And so when I noticed that the internet seemed awfully slow, like way slower than usual. I tested it and we were only getting 100 megabits. which, considering we're supposed to be getting a gigabit, that was like, what is going on here? So ended up calling and troubleshooting. Turns out that what it was is that the cable that I had connecting from the from the router to the Wi-Fi connection box was a Cat 5 cable, and it needed to be either a Cat 5 or a Cat 6 cable, because Cat 5 can only do up to 100 megabits of transfer speed. And so yeah, I learned that. I mean, thankfully it wasn't something that affected me too long, but it was definitely like when I was uploading the podcast and stuff, that it was going a lot slower than I was expecting, and I just, didn't have time to mess around with it at that point. But then when I, checked it out later in the day, I found out, oh, that's why. Because it was just a cable that was lying around. It was one of the ones that my parents had in boxes, and then once I switched to a different cable, everything was fine. Gigabit up and down, which is fantastic. It's going to be great, because I think our previous internet, we didn't have a gigabit up. I'm not sure what it went up to, but it was nowhere near gigabit, whereas down was. So, because that was cable based, and now it's fiber, so it's different. But anyway, I don't think there's really anything else. I mean, I guess we're doing a special at my in-laws' church on Sunday. Playing a song there. So, my mother-in-law was able to get us a guitar and a violin to borrow for a bit, and so we're gonna use those, and we went over it once earlier today, and then we'll go over it again before Sunday. But it's a song we played before at our church. So the only thing that's a little weird for me is I'm not used to playing a classical guitar. I've had an acoustic electric for 19 years, and it's built like an electric guitar, so it's thin body and everything, and no sound hole, so it's not as loud unless it's plugged in, whereas this one is very loud without being plugged in, and it's also nowhere near as good of a guitar. But like, hey, it works. Same with my wife's violin. Hers is much nicer at home, and the one we're borrowing is fine. I mean, it'll work, and we're looking forward to it. It'll be fun. We just didn't want to bring our instruments with us, especially because the car was very packed, but also because our instruments are expensive and we didn't want to transport them. So, but yeah, I think that's everything other than gaming stuff. So
yeah, very, very nice. Definitely sad to hear about AC going out, especially for 10 plus hours on like through the entire ride. Yeah. But I'm glad that you're able to get that resolved at the very least, even if it did cost more than you anticipated. But yeah, definitely glad you got that fixed, because I mean, I understand. I mean, I've had it before, not having AC in a car, and it definitely can be dreadful, but at least that was short periods of time rather than just a straight solid drive in the heat. So definitely glad you got that resolved. Yeah, definitely hope that you have a good date night tomorrow, and definitely hope that things go well with you performing on Sunday as well. So I'm sorry, just to make sure I get this straight. So you're going to be doing everything as far as like your 4th of July celebration there, then coming back and then 4th of July.
Oh, no, we're not going anywhere. I mean, I should say, we are here until next Saturday, the 12th, is when we're driving back home. So,
okay.
So yeah, we still have over a week to go.
Okay. Cool.
Oh yeah, one thing I did forget to mention, the job is official, finally. Turns out that I didn't actually have to sign any paperwork, because it's just an internal transfer. I mean, an internal promotion, instead of it being like if I was accepting a new job, then I would have to sign paperwork, but because it's not, I don't have to sign anything, and so it was official as of yesterday. So it's a little over 10% raise, which is pretty nice, and that is all I got. So,
all right. Well, congratulations, though. Let me just say congratulations.
Thank you.
Definitely glad that you finally got that resolved, and I'm glad it also was easier than you anticipated, since there was no paperwork. So definitely good news there.
Yep. All right. So, Mr. Eyes of a Black Cat and Ears of a Fox, why don't you tell me what you've been playing this week?
All right. So while, like I said, I was with my niece and nephew and they were playing my Steam Deck, initially they were just playing it and I was just watching them play while giving them tips for different games. And then eventually they said, oh, we want to play this. We want to play something else. We want to play this game. And so the first game that was selected was Tunic. And I was like, all right, I'm going to have to give some more coaching since this is a bit more action based than they're, used to. Well, kind of more action based than they're used to. But I played that for a while. My nephew played that, and then eventually he just got frustrated because he kept dying, and so I was like, that's fine. But because of the fact that he played it and he got like an achievement for us, like, well, this is kind of going to impact my overall Steam completion rate, so I might as well play the game now. So I started playing, and I was like, yeah, this is actually kind of fun. So Tunic is essentially a Zelda-like. And by essentially, I mean, it pretty much is Zelda, or at least the older classic Zelda game. So that nice, well, I mean, this one's more isometric than, just a top-down 2D game. But it's, an older style. It has that classic, distinct look that you have when you play Zelda 1 and Link to the Past. It's got that good, solid gameplay. A lot of puzzles and exploration, and I will say it's very reminiscent of Zelda 1, and I guess you could say Zelda 2, because it's very much what do I do type of game, because this game does not hold your hand at all. You have to figure out where you need to go and what you need to do. You need to find the puzzles before you can solve the puzzles, essentially. And it's also interesting because the game has a built-in manual that is very reminiscent of, older Zelda game manuals as well. And you only get bits and pieces of them as you play the game. But additionally, similar to A Link to the Past, where there were certain signs that could only be read if you had the Book of Medora, and, if you didn't have it, it would just be some weird, strange text that you couldn't decipher. The game has that all throughout. I mean, like, signs have it, the manual has it as well. So while there are a few things that are in English, everything, for the most part, is just that weird text. And I don't know if at some point you get some sort of translator that allows you to read what the text actually says. But it's just, but it's just like complete gibberish right now. So that's interesting in a sense, because like I said, it was interesting in Link to the Past when you like had certain signs that you needed to have the Book of Medora to translate, but here it's just like virtually everything you need to translate. So it's interesting in that aspect. Combat is I appreciate that it has sort of a lock-on feature that you get from sort of the 3D Zelda games, which makes things nice, especially when you face multiple enemies. Mm-hmm. Some enemies are a bit... So the game also has certain elements that come from a game that's known for its difficulty spike, or at least higher difficulty. Now, it's not... The game's not difficult per se, but it just has these elements that sort of borrow from it. Like, having a refillable healing item that only heals when you're at a certain rest point. But the rest point also revives all the enemies. Mm-hmm. And if you die, you lose currency. I'm not going to, say what the game is, but I think a lot of people know what it is. But it also has a dodge mechanic that has stamina attached to it, which kind of makes it a bit difficult, especially since dodging can be a bit finicky, especially if you're attacking enemies, because you don't necessarily dodge right away after you swing, which makes timing your attacks and dodging a bit of a pain, especially with enemies that have fast that have sudden attack animations. So it's definitely a bit of a thing that I have an issue with. It's not a glaring issue, but for enemies that have shields primarily, that's the one that really makes things a bit more challenging, just because you can't attack them until after they swing, but at the same time, after they swing, they recover, and you have to make sure that you attack that right after you attack, you immediately dodge, otherwise you'll get hit. So it's definitely has a bit of a learning curve in that aspect. Nothing too big. Now, something that's very interesting that I think is really cool is that the fact that there are actually a whole lot of shortcuts built in the areas that you won't actually find until you actually do some exploration, because as you explore, you go through certain areas and then you're like, okay, here's the new path, let me go down this path, and then you realize, wait a second, this entire time I've been going back and forth, there was a shortcut that was here the entire time. It's not like it was hidden by some, well, I mean, technically it was an invisible wall, but it's not like you had to damage the wall. It's not like you had to open a gate. It was, you literally could have just walked right through there. And I was like, that's creative. It's interesting, I'll definitely say. But I think if someone was trying to like replay the game and do some speed running, it definitely would really help. But I think that's really cool there. I've gotten, oh, and also one more reference to that game series that people might or might not be familiar with. There's a bell that there are two bells you have to ring. I must say, there's like an Eastern bell and a Western bell. And so, the first time you go, you ring the bell, and then you go to the other bell, which I still have to get to, and you have to ring that bell as well. I'm just like, huh. I feel like I've seen this before somewhere. But yeah. Now, one last thing I'll say, sort of like as a reference type of thing, is in the manual, I saw this one enemy that I thought, oh, this must be the final boss, because it looks very similar to Ganon, classic Ganon. And I was just like, oh wow. I mean, I'm surprised they just like they show he's showing up right here, but it turns out it actually just was a common enemy that you face. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean I guess it's cool that they didn't just reveal the final boss, but I was like, huh, that's interesting. But yeah, all in all, I'm definitely enjoying it. I will probably play this some more. I know I got to a certain point where I was saying, well, I'm in a sewer area right now, and there are just like these enemies that can essentially, unless you time your attacks right, because they just spin and attack you, and it's just annoying to deal with. I either die, or I have to or after I clear out the area, I have no more healing, so I have to go back to the rest point. But that revives the enemies, of course, so I have to go through that and try to go through the area flawlessly. So I might take a short, well, I won't take a break, but I'll play it some more, but I'll just probably not be as fast-paced as I was with it before. But I'm definitely enjoying it especially after I figure out where I need to go. That's sort of like the biggest hurdle that I had, was just going, all right, what do I do now? But definitely good stuff there. Now, the other game that my niece and nephew want to play was Hello Kitty Big City.
Little Kitty.
And I'm sorry, Little Kitty Big City. And this sort of was not kind of like a palate cleanser in a sense, because it was a more relaxing game as opposed to the brainstorming that was needed for Tunic. And you've played this before, you definitely recommended it, and I can see why you enjoyed it. It's definitely a nice, slow-paced game, a nice, cozy game to play. Just exploring the city, trying to solve all of the side quests. And, I mean, it's definitely funny, certain things. I mean, you don't start... It's definitely, I get, as you said, a jerk game, but I feel like you don't necessarily have to be a jerk in the game, but you sort of inevitably fall into being a jerk. Partially it was due to, I mean, the character isn't a jerk per se, but it's more so just like what you do personally as a player, because during some of the side stuff you do, which requires interactions with the humans, certain things you need from them or you need them to do, I of course will trip them if I have to for certain things. But on the other hand, it's like, okay, I need you to do something, so take my picture, pet me right now. Oh, you're going to ignore me? You're not going to do anything? All right, I'm going to trip you just out of spite now. So, yeah, so I guess that's more sort of a reflection of me than the game, as far as who is the bigger jerk there. But I definitely all the characters that you meet are definitely likable. They're definitely funny in their own ways, and it's just been interesting. And something that I didn't. Unfortunately, this was after I'd recorded everything, but later on, I got the dog hat, and so I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I'm wearing this. But then I found a sword, and then I picked up the sword. I was like, I am Seif right now. I am now Great Wolf Seif. So just like running around, and of course, if people see you with a weapon, they're just like alerted, like, oh my gosh, there's a cat with a dangerous weapon. And so, it was just interesting. It was just fun doing that for a bit. And actually, I've pretty much, I'm at the part where you can beat the game. I didn't even realize that I was about to beat the game until as I was climbing, there were characters saying like, sort of like their final goodbyes to me. I was like, oh wait, I'm actually about to finish the game. I'm going to stop right now, actually. So I went back down, and I essentially want to try to get all the other achievements and stuff completed first before I complete the game, because I was just like, yeah, I didn't intend on being in. I was just thought, oh, here's another area to explore, and I looked at the map and I realized, oh wait, this is actually my home. So let me stop doing that right now. So I'm just pretty much at this point just clearing everything before I do the final climb. And it's definitely not a short game. I mean, I think I probably was around 3 or 4 hours in when I was at that point where I was climbing up. I probably could have been doing that much sooner since I'd gotten the final piece of fish that I needed to do the climb. But I'll probably be finished with it by next week, I would definitely say, with getting all the rest of the achievements and stuff. But definitely a fun game.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed that one quite a bit last year. It was just like a good little short game to play, and of course it was just kind of funny being a jerk sometimes, and I don't know, just cats are funny creatures, so yeah, good stuff. And with Tunic, yeah, so I remember when I first saw this game, whenever it came out, I don't even remember. I loved the art style, and I loved the the Zelda-like elements, but then of course there's obviously the Souls-like elements that initially, at that point I wasn't into Souls games, and so I just didn't even bother trying it. But now it's like, watching you play this, I was looking at the sale and I was like, I don't know, should I grab it? I didn't, because I just decided I'll wait until it's like 10 or lower. When it gets down to $10 or lower, like $7.50, like that's a good number for me to pull the trigger on it. But yeah, it looks great. I know it's one I'm going to enjoy whenever I get to that, but I'm not buying it till it's cheaper. So either way, good. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I don't know if you would want to, but if you, I don't know if this was limited or not, but I don't think it was. But if you wanted to, you could get it physically on the Switch. And I know that part of the packing, they did try to keep it reminiscent of the original Zelda game.
Right.
So even even comes with an instruction booklet, which is still in the style of the original Zelda game as well. So if you're interested in getting it physically, that's just an option.
I'll keep that in mind. Main thing is that I have a feeling it's probably not running at 60 on the Switch. And I would imagine Switch 2 probably doesn't have any sort of update for it. But I'll look into it, because if like it had a Switch 2 update and actually ran at 60, I would probably grab it physical. But otherwise, I'm not entirely sure, because I'm kind of more moving away from a lot of those, just because I'm kind of tired of dealing with the lower frame rate and stuff, especially when it's still lower frame rate on the Switch 2, where, if it were proper hardware, it would just raise the frame rate by simply having stronger hardware, but that would be too convenient for the consumer. So let's see here. Okay, so in terms of what I've been playing, so of course last week especially I was suffering very much from game journalist reflexes syndrome, and so I was just wanting to play stuff that didn't require any sort of reflexes, that was like turn-based, that sort of thing. So of course I played quite a bit of Yu-Gi-Oh! I ended up playing that mostly when I was not driving when we were on our trip. And I ended up finishing, I think yesterday maybe, the first Yu-Gi-Oh story duels, at least doing them the normal way. To get 100%, you actually have to go back through and redo each one playing as the opposite person. So I'll probably go and do that at some point. But yeah, I mean, overall, I enjoy it. It was a good game that I didn't have to think too much about. So that was kind of helpful from that standpoint. And of course, it's very RNG heavy, where like sometimes you'll get the perfect hand and you'll get the right draws, and then other times you just get nothing at all and it's just complete garbage. And when I get to those points, it's like I might as well just exit and retry. There was like one guy that you fight, which is one like in the Battle City arc of the show, where he has multiple of every piece of Exodia, and basically you have to take him out before he gets all 5 pieces in his hand. And there are some cards you have in your deck that can remove all of a certain card, but the only way that happens is if he happens to summon that card face up to where you can use that trap, and then we'll get rid of all of the cards of that type from his deck. So I lost to him a bunch of times because of how easily he could keep getting pieces of Exodia in his hand, because he's a stupid cheater. But anyway, so yeah, I played quite a bit of that. But I did try jumping back into Guacamelee too, and I was still just struggling to get through that one level, the one chicken challenge thing. And so I ended up just kind of stepping away from it. I basically decided, okay, I'm going to try playing something else on the Steam Deck, or on the Switch 2 that I haven't played yet. And I remembered, oh yeah, I got the game called Shim, which we had seen before. It's the one where you're like jumping between shadows. We'd seen it on an Indie Direct a while back, and we were both interested in it. And I got it physically on Switch a while ago, but I hadn't started it up yet because I was waiting until I got my Switch 2. So I played it for a bit. I'm honestly kind of mixed on it. It's not quite as good as I was hoping it would be. Basically, the main thing is you're using shadows to get to different locations. You're jumping through shadows, but sometimes it's simpler than others, and at least so far, there's just not much depth to it. Like, it's not as deep as I was hoping for. I mean, I haven't been able to, like, get through every level. Like, I got stuck on one of the levels. But it just feels like it's more shallow in terms of its experience so far. Now, maybe something will change as I move on. Maybe I'll, like, gain some type of additional ability or something to make it a little more interesting. Some other mechanic or gimmick or something to make it more interesting. But so far, I'm kind of like, on it. So I didn't really stick with it super long. I did, like, I think I was on the 12th level or something like that. And I don't know how many levels there actually are in the game. But, I mean, I'll probably still at least try to finish it. But I'm not actively playing it. I just wanted to try it out. But because of that, another game that I've had for a while, and I don't have footage recorded here, but that I've been wanting to actually give a real try to, especially now that I have the Switch 2, was Triangle Strategy, which is, from the same makers who made Octopath Traveler, and so then they made Triangle Strategy, and then they made Octopath Traveler 2. So I started playing it a little bit on the Switch 2, and it was really bothering me how blurry it was. I mean, it was like blurry. It's only 30 frames per second. I think it looked better on the Switch and Switch OLED screens because of the fact that those are lower resolution screens, and it's because of the fact that it doesn't have any sort of update for the Switch 2. It's running at a lower resolution on that 1080p screen. So it just didn't look the best, and it was bothering me just enough to where I just went ahead and looked, okay, is this or Octopath Traveler 2 on sale on Steam or through like Instant Gaming or something? And but they were both on sale, so I grabbed both Triangle Strategy and Octopath Traveler 2 for Steam and started playing first Triangle Strategy on the Steam Deck. And oh my goodness, so much better. So of course, obviously for one, you can actually customize the settings, which is super helpful. I basically ran the thing at max settings. I turned off ambient occlusion, turned off like the shadows around the edges. I can't remember if there was motion blur, but if there was, I turned it off. And I turned off anti-aliasing because I didn't really feel like the aliasing was adding anything. But even with everything completely maxed out, it was getting locked 60 FPS, except when it's like doing transitions between scenes, in which case it's just literally a black screen. And so the frame rate dropping doesn't make any difference. It does not go above 60, at least not without any sort of modification. I didn't look into mods, but I was like, 60 is fine. Perfectly happy with that. It's much better than 30. The game looks a lot better. It just looks great. It runs great. So I didn't get super far into it. I'm further than I was on the Switch version. But still, like, I think I've only done actually one fight so far. It's been more story than anything else, just kind of setting stuff up. But, you know, it's turn-based strategy RPG. So, you know, it has that HD 2D style. It looks beautiful. Has great music. Voice acting has been really solid. Yeah, I've been enjoying what I played, but I've only played, I think, maybe an hour, 2 hours at the most. So, still very early. Oh my goodness. Still very early in the game. So, but as I mentioned, I did also grab Octopath Traveler 2, and I restarted that. Well, since I had already played it a bit on the Switch, but I went ahead and started that on Steam Deck. And there, I could get 90 frames per second. For a while there, it was pretty close to locked, just by turning off anti-aliasing and maxing out everything else. But when there was a lot going on screen, it was dropping more into like the mid-70s. So I ended up just capping it at 60. And, you know, similarly, it has a lot of visual settings you can do. It actually has more, because it came out more recently. Square Enix did a really good job with giving you a lot of freedom to customize the visual settings. But yeah, it runs really great. You know, 60 FPS locked easily, even with all the settings maxed out, even though I, you know, modified a couple things just because I wanted to. And, you know, it looks great. Music is amazing. Once again, voice acting is also really great. I've just started playing the first character. I mean, the first character I chose was a samurai type guy named Hikari, and so I've been playing as him, and he's the same one that I had started the Switch version with as well. But yeah, I played more of that than I did of Triangle Strategy. I think I played 2 or 3 hours, something like that. Still very early in the game. I basically just got through like his opening story mission thing, and then from there I had stopped playing. But yeah, it's very good stuff. It's really nice playing it on the Steam Deck. Really, really nice. So I'm looking forward to messing with both of those games quite a bit as time goes on. But I'll just mention briefly, because I didn't record any new footage. I did play some more of Tales of the Abyss. The footage that I'll be playing is just the stuff I had playing from last week. I didn't play a lot because it wasn't one that was as easy to play in the car, especially because we were listening to something while I was playing, and I wanted to be able to like really focus on it. So I didn't play very much. Probably put like another 20-30 minutes into it, because I didn't really have time to play on Thursday. And then, you know, Friday when we were traveling, the only game that I was actually playing was Yu-Gi-Oh! When I wasn't driving, obviously. So yeah, but move the needle on that a little bit. Just haven't really touched it since last week because of that. So, but I did end up deciding that I wanted to try out something else, or rather, more, I just wanted to test it. So I can't remember. I think maybe it was just I saw like a video in my YouTube feed that made me want to boot it up and see if it ran any better, and that was Bloodborne. Now, I really didn't play much at all. I played like 10 minutes. So I just recorded a tiny bit of footage, basically just for the sake of seeing if it ran any better. I didn't mess with any settings or anything. I just updated Shad PS4, and from there, that was really all I did. Although it was, I got scared for a second because when I updated Shad PS4, when I booted up Bloodborne, it didn't detect my save data. It was like, no, I didn't lose all my save data. Please, no. And I dug through and I figured out that just for some reason, because of, the older version of Shad PS4 had the save data stored in a different folder. And so it was like set up as a different folder. So I just copied the save data over to the new folder, and then it detected it no problem. So then I was able to, play that little tiny bit. I'm not really playing Bloodborne right now because I'm still kind of waiting to jump into that, especially because I want to see, for one, if I can try and get better performance out of it, because it was just way too stuttery on the laptop. But more likely than not, when I play it, it's going to be basically exclusively on my desktop, because that's where it runs well and I don't have any issues with that. But also because, I'm still in the middle of Dark Souls 3 and I still have Neo and stuff, and so, we'll see when I actually get back to it. But I did finally decide to jump back into Dark Souls 3 after taking a bit of a break. And I made it to the Demon in Pain and Demon from Below, followed by the Demon Prince. It took me a handful of tries, but I did beat them. Initially I went in with just one summon, because you can do up to two. When I went in with just one summon, I got to the second phase, and then I just made a dumb mistake, and I got hit by the lasers that it used, and then ended up, unfortunately it didn't last very long. And it's like, I kind of knew that it was coming, but I accidentally got hit by one laser, and then as I was getting up, it fired its big laser at me and killed me. Oh. And so I ended up just not even bothering for a little bit, and I needed to farm some more embers anyway so that I could go in, so I could actually summon. And so I did that for a bit. I just basically just farmed until I got one, and then, tried again, and it took probably 5 or 6 tries. The last couple times I ended up going in with both of the summons that were available, and they're just the in-game summons, rather than actual players. And even though that does increase the boss's health by quite a bit, it also just made it a little easier to keep their attention. I don't think this one was nearly as hard as Sister Friede and Father Ariendel, but and definitely nowhere near as hard as Ornstein and Smaug were for me in Dark Souls 1. But yeah, so I didn't unfortunately get the full winning fight recorded. The footage here is from the last attempt I did, where I had just one NPC summon and then, got killed as soon as I was trying to get up. But at the very end of the footage, I do have the end of the winning fight recorded, since the Steam Deck was being more inconsistent. Which reminds me, actually, the performance on my laptop, I'm not sure if it's because I hadn't updated my graphics driver, but it started out good, and then it got really stuttery, and so it was just not a pleasant experience, and I ended up moving my save back over to Steam Deck, and then I didn't have any problems. So I just went back to playing on Steam Deck. But one thing that did happen, though, that was like almost I was a little worried for a minute there. So I had gotten an ember. I went to the bonfire that's just outside the demon's boss fight, and I saved my game and thought, okay, I will upload my save to my Google Drive, and that way, if I fail this, I can always just copy my save back over and not have to go through the trouble of refarming for the embers. And when I did that, I forgot about how slow the internet was here, And so it hadn't finished fully downloading from the cloud, or no, it hadn't finished fully uploading to the cloud or downloading. It was one of the two. It hadn't finished doing it one direction. And so then when I tried downloading it, I mean, I started up the game, I think it was before it had fully downloaded the save data backup and or the save data. Okay, let me back up. I think I know what happened. So it was that I was trying to upload the save data, but I didn't wait to make sure that it actually finished, because I figured the internet should be fast enough that it shouldn't take more than a few seconds. I was wrong on that. And so I booted up the game while it was still uploading the save data. And then when I was trying to copy it over, it basically said it was corrupted. It's like, the save data is corrupted. You want to erase it and create a new game? And I'm like, no. But I couldn't do that. I couldn't exit the game without doing that because I was in desktop mode, and I didn't, have a keyboard plugged in or anything. And so I was a little worried for a second there, and then I remembered I still had the save data from just a couple hours prior, where basically the only thing I had done since then was just farming for embers and a couple more attempts at the boss fight. So I went back to my computer, uploaded, made sure the data fully uploaded to the cloud, then re-downloaded it onto my Steam Deck, and then I was fine. I just had to refarm a little bit and, had my remaining attempts that it took to actually finish the fight. And I don't have any footage recorded for it, but earlier today I did. I made it to the Ringed City last night after I beat the Demon Prince, and I played some today, and I don't know if you're at all familiar with the beginning part of the Ringed City. So right when you walk down the stairs, there's like 50 of these ghost knights that appear that all fire off volleys of 3 arrows at you at the same time. And if you don't take advantage of the gravestones that are on the side and get in the right spot, they will kill you very fast. You cannot block these shots. You cannot dodge them. I've seen people use an emote to avoid them, which works partially, but only if you have the right timing, because if you do it too early, they'll still shoot at you and then you'll die. So yeah, that part was I can understand why people hate this part. And so then I watched the Fighting Cowboy walkthrough and figured out, oh, when I get close to the end, I have to jump off the side and then take a path to get up to the sorcerer guy that's summoning all these things. And he's still a little bit of a pain to kill because he has a good amount of health and he'll summon things around him as well. But I was able to get up there, and after a couple tries, I was able to kill him. And I stupidly thought, oh, I killed him because he's like a bigger guy. He's not going to respawn if I end up back here. Nope, that wasn't right. Of course, once he despawns, then all of the ghost knights despawn too. But at least after he despawned, I got all the collectibles in the area, and then I went further down, hadn't quite gotten to the second bonfire, and died. And so I woke up back at the bonfire before that and saw the summoner was back. I was like, oh crap. So at least I knew how to get back there. I didn't even bother trying to kill him. I just went down the stairs and continued forward until I got to the bonfire. And apart from that, I tried getting to the next bonfire, because I did watch Fighting Cowboys walk through, and I got 2/3 to probably about half to 2/3 of the way there, and then died, and I haven't gotten back since. I will say, I think my game journalist reflex syndrome is more or less gone, but it's still not at my peak levels by any stretch. So at least I feel like I can actually progress in Dark Souls 3 and continue to move on. I know that there's 3 bosses left, one of which is optional. And I plan to fight all of them because with as long of a break as I took, I'm just going to beat all of them. Now, I will probably never come back to the DLC the next time I play Dark Souls 3. At least as of right now, I'm not planning on it. But, at least I will be able to say, yes, I actually finished everything in this game and be satisfied with it from that standpoint. Now, will I go for all achievements? Maybe eventually, but a lot of it's going to depend on if/when I ever decide to do New Game Plus. And of course, I want to make sure that I get everything I can on the first game before I attempt to do New Game Plus, because I don't want to have to redo stuff I've already done if it would make it easier for me to get like sorceries and miracles and whatnot. So, but very lastly, I did jump back into Guacamelee 2 because I figured, hey, if my reflexes are not completely game journalisted, then I can probably eventually get through this. And I did make it further. I got past a couple spots where I had been stuck and figured out ways to more consistently get past those spots, but I still end up dying frequently, and I think I need to watch someone do it so that I know how much further I have to go from where I was, because I'm not sure if I'm like close to the end of it, or if it's like, oh, I'm halfway through, or no, you're like a quarter of the way through and you still have this whole way to go with no checkpoints. So I'll see what happens there, but that is everything, I believe. That's all the stuff I have written down, at least.
Okay. So going back to Shim, definitely disappointing that the game was not as enjoyable as we both had hoped. So with that, I guess just question, you mentioned it being shallow as far as the mechanics. So has the game just only essentially had whatever mechanics were introduced at the very beginning and that's it, or has there been any progression of introducing mechanics and then just suddenly stopped, or is it just like everything is just a bit too simplistic overall?
I wouldn't really say there's been any mechanics introduced per se. Like the first couple of sections, you have to like get into someone's shadow and then you move that person to get to the next area in order to continue on and do more of the smaller puzzles. And then as you progress, you have more puzzles where you have less of the board hopping on someone's shadow and then moving, and even then you're not controlling them. So from that standpoint, I guess sort of, but not really. It's mostly just jumping from shadow to shadow, and unfortunately it just, like, I don't know if it gets any deeper than this. I hope it does, but right now I'm very much at a spot where it just doesn't interest me very much, which is a shame because I thought that it looked really interesting and unique and something that I would really enjoy, but so far I've just been very underwhelmed.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely a shame, because I've been looking at it every now and then in my library. I was like, yeah, I've been wanting to play this for a while, but then it's just like, after hearing this, I'm like, yeah, I guess it's kind of good that I haven't jumped into it so far, but I'll see. Maybe eventually I'll get into it, but of course there's that ever-growing backlog.
Right.
But yeah. So going into Triangle Strategy, so I guess a couple questions. First off, regarding the performance issues, have you, well, or at least with the Switch, like, does it seem like the, I guess the question I'm wondering is, how does Octopath Traveler look that you've seen so far on the Switch 2? Like,
I haven't tried.
Just, like,
I haven't tried
because it's a newer
Octopath Traveler
game?
2. I haven't tried Octopath Traveler 2 on the Switch 2.
Okay.
I mostly just like the only time I've only played it on the Switch OLED before this, and it looked great there, but apart from being 30 FPS, but it was just more like I already knew that it was probably going to have the same issues because it's basically the same visual style and everything else, and if it I think it would probably look better on the larger screen. Like if I did it on a 1080p screen, when it's docked, it would probably look just fine. It would actually do the 1080p, but It just doesn't do that with the Switch 2 because of the fact that it's a default 1080p screen, but for handheld mode, it's running at 720p. And furthermore, just even though 60 FPS is not needed necessarily, it's still better than 30. And I was just getting really tired of dealing with that, and I've been kind of irritated at Nintendo as it is with various things, but I mean, this is the reason why I never got a PS5, is because I get so tired of these games not being upgraded when you have stronger hardware. And when I found out that Persona 5 Royal did not have 60 FPS on the PS5, I was just like, you know what, I'm not gonna get a PS5. I'm just so tired of this, and I've been going back and forth a lot on just getting rid of my Switch 2, returning it or selling it or whatever. I mean, ultimately I've settled on I'm keeping it, more just because it's like, if I get rid of it, I'm just going to end up having to buy one again later on for the games that I actually do want to play, or, for certain upgrades and that sort of thing. But I'm tired of Nintendo. They're really pissing me off. But anyway.
Okay. And then I guess just regarding the game itself, so I don't really know too much about Triangle Strategy, so is it kind of, I don't want to say linear, but I guess is it really focusing on just one storyline as opposed to Octopath Traveler, where it's just 8 different storylines?
Yeah, I believe so. It's more one storyline. I would say it's kind of, from what I can tell, it seems to be more along the lines of like Final Fantasy Tactics, where it's basically just one flowing storyline. Maybe even you could say to a degree kind of like Fire Emblem from that standpoint as well.
Okay. And I guess sort of just going off that was another thing I was going to mention was, does it seem like there are major kind of improvements to the mechanics as opposed to Final Fantasy Tactics, which it was based off of? Or does it seem to be playing more so similar? Because I mean, Octopath Traveler kind of did that with the gameplay, with playing similar to older Final Fantasy games, but still having certain quirks or mechanics that refresh things. So does Triangle Strategy do something similar?
Well, because it's been so long since I've tried Final Fantasy Tactics, I don't really remember. I would say it probably has more mechanics than Tactics did because of just being a newer game and having a lot more they can do with the hardware. But like I said, it's been such a long time since I've even touched Tactics, and I never played much of it.
Okay. And then for Octopath Traveler 2, I know you've only just been playing with one character so far, but if you could, eventually when you get to that point, let me know what you think of the character storylines as far as how things connect, because that kind of was my biggest complaint with Octopath Traveler 1 is the fact that the characters just feel so disjointed, because I mean, I heard someone say that near, I think, the end of like the second quest line for the characters and like maybe the third quest line, that's when they start to connect. But until that point, every character felt so disconnected that playing one character storyline and then jumping to another character storyline was just such a huge jump. And it felt like you're playing a completely different game just because of the fact that there was no connection there, and the characters don't even interact with each other outside of, I think, the taverns. But other than that, they really just had no connection. So I was like, it really didn't keep me invested in the game, and I felt very disappointed in it. So I was kind of hoping that Octopath Traveler 2 would fix that issue that I had, where the characters actually would kind of interact with each other because you're a party. So even if it's not directly in the actual storyline, that there would be some sort of connection there overall. Just because it just felt disconnected to me, and it really just stopped. It caused me to stop caring and overall just stop playing, because even though I thought the gameplay was phenomenal and the music was great too, it's just that the story felt so lacking that I just didn't feel much of a motivation to keep going on. So let me know how that goes with Octopath 2.
Well, I can tell you right now, just from talking to someone that I trust, he this is the guy I've mentioned before who like will platinum a bunch of games, and he and I have very similar tastes when it comes to RPGs and soundtracks and that sort of thing. He has said that this game does a great job connecting all the characters and giving a story that like you actually care about. So, um, I have high hopes. I trust him when he says that. Like I don't have any reason to doubt him. I know there are games that he likes that I don't like Last of Us Part 2, but um, otherwise he and I are very much on the same page in terms of our tastes. And so when he says that it has, that great connection and everything, I trust him. And I don't think there's any reason to doubt that.
Okay, well that's definitely good then. So I might check it out later on down the road then, and check that out.
Yeah, I think I got it. I think it was like $20 on Instant Gaming, like maybe just over 20. Either Instant Gaming or Fanatical. It was one of those sites. I don't remember which one, but it was one of them that it was just over $20, and I thought that was worth it compared to spending $60 normally for it.
Right. All right, I'll definitely have to check that out then at some point. It's definitely interesting there. And then I guess lastly, just talking about Dark Souls 3. Glad that you finally made it into the actual Ring City. Not so happy that there was a beginner's trap immediately getting there. Hopefully the rest of the game isn't like that. I mean, of course, outside of the bosses, especially with two of the bosses that I know of. I'm not certain who the third one is, but I know two of them are just like, from what I've heard, just complete bullies.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely hope that you enjoy the rest of it, and I am definitely glad that you are recovering from your game journalist reflex syndrome. No, I'm definitely glad that you're recovering from that. So, I hope that you recover through the rest of your ailments.
Indeed. All right. Well, anything else before we get into the news? All right, so let's get into the news. First of all, we're going to talk about how Microsoft is doing some major layoffs. Now, I typically don't like talking about layoffs a whole lot because they always suck, and there's no sugarcoating it. Like, it sucks. It doesn't matter who does it. It sucks every time that it happens to people, and regardless of what the reasoning is, it sucks. And I will say the layoffs are not exclusive to Xbox. They're all over Microsoft. It's across numerous studios. There's some studios that are being closed down, which include like The Initiative. Some projects, both announced and unannounced, that have been canceled. But as an overall thing, it sucks that it's happening, and it's being reported it's about 9,000 people across Microsoft. And I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, initially, as you said, it definitely sucks. It definitely sucks when you have something like this and across the board, across multiple studios, across multiple divisions. I mean, it's horrible. And I mean, like you said, 9,000 people, as much as 9,000 people, that's a lot. I mean, some people might say it's not that much, but that's only if you're trying to look and say, oh, it's only like 4% of the overall company, but that's still 9,000 is a lot of people. I mean, you can have a whole city full of people with that number. So it's really it's really something there, and I don't know what the reason absolutely could be with that. I mean, from what I've even seen, I even try to make heads or tails of this because I was trying to figure out what is the reasoning behind this. Because it doesn't make sense to me that this many people would be cut. I mean, we'll talk some more about stuff later, but I'm just like, it just boggles me. And as much as I disapproved of them buying Activision before, because I was just like, oh, it's, it's they're going to make their games exclusive on Xbox. And even though I don't play on that platform and I don't, it doesn't affect me at all, I still wanted PlayStation gamers to get those games from Activision and whatnot. But, I mean, of course, so far, Microsoft has still, allowed games to go over there. But it really just adds more fuel to the fire of Microsoft buying games is a bad thing, because they're really just firing people, or I mean, not technically they're not fired, they're laid off, but I mean, they're still unemployed as a result of it, no matter what you call it. And so I'm just like, what is the reason behind this? Why are you terminating all these people? Like, if it's something where, as far as, I don't know, because they say, or at least from what I've heard, they've had, good revenue reports and stuff like that. So as far as I can tell, it's not a situation where, oh, we're, losing a lot of money, and so we're trying to, in the proverbial sense, trim the fat. It's not something like that. So, like, they're doing well, but they're still laying off people, and I'm just like, doesn't make sense. It's not like a situation also where, well, I mean, granted, I don't know. I haven't been following any of their game sales, so I don't know if the game has been particularly, selling poorly. But if that was a reason, I could understand the method. I could understand the thinking behind that. But at the same time, though, this is across the board. So multiple studios are getting laid off. Multiple, stuff's being canceled. So, like, it's, I don't know. This has just been a very catastrophic thing. And I'm just wondering what's going on at all. It's just, I mean, I obviously don't have an answer for anything, but it's just a bad situation overall, and it's probably one of the worst layoffs that we've had in a while, because frankly, unlike with other ones that I've seen, or at least heard about, there's no rhyme or reason for this one. I mean, so the other ones I see, because of reason A, this layoff is happening. Whether or not I agree with it or not, at least there's a reason, but behind why it happened. Here, there's like no reason whatsoever. So that is the biggest thing that I have an issue with this. But yeah, that's essentially everything I have regarding the layoffs.
Yeah, one thing I did come across, and I didn't share it mostly because I wasn't sure about the sourcing of it, but supposedly, with these 9,000 layoffs, they are planning to hire about 14,000 people who are offshored. And I would believe that. And not even because of Microsoft specifically, but because of big corporations in general, because they want to improve their bottom line, and they will make a lot more money if they can hire people who can work for less money. And of course, with so much of work around the world being, possible remotely, I can see what they would be doing with that. I'm not a fan of it, and I have nothing against the people who, are offshored themselves. But I do wish that companies in general, not even just Microsoft, but any of these companies that are American-based would prioritize hiring American workers, because that affects the economy across the board, and of course just affects people's ability to, provide for their families, to pay their bills, to just live in general. And like I'm not going to get really into it because I've seen it in a lot more places than just Microsoft. So as much as I dislike, honestly, I don't know, it's such a weird thing because I dislike the practice, but I don't have any problem with the people themselves that are doing the work, that are being hired, because they're usually like good people, and a lot of times, they're providing for their families and everything else too. But it's also a situation where we need to take care of the people in our own house before we start taking care of people outside of our house. And it's like, people would say I'm a terrible father if I gave all my money to the poor instead of gave all my money to people in other countries instead of taking care of my own family. And that's pretty much kind of a summary of how I feel about that in general. And like I said, I have absolutely nothing against these foreign workers. I have one guy on my team who's in the Philippines, and we've just hired someone else to fill an empty position from the Philippines. That's going to be starting with us soon. And they're good people. They're hard workers. Like, I don't have anything against them. I don't like the practice of not taking care of people that are in our country that need jobs too. Because obviously it's more expensive. And like, I understand why they do it, but I don't like it. And between this and, the other, studio closures and stuff, and we'll get into some of that, I can understand to some degree why people are saying, oh, you should fire Phil Spencer. I had one person who, in general, like, I have a lot of respect for, but I completely disagree with his take on this. And he said that, Phil Spencer should have been fired a long time ago. And my thought on the matter is that, for starters, I don't think Phil Spencer is the sole reason why some of these studio closures are happening. In fact, I don't even think he's necessarily a cause at all. Could you say it's poor leadership? Maybe. But I would also say that Xbox probably wouldn't exist today if Phil Spencer hadn't stepped in and corrected the ship after the disaster that was the Xbox One launch. Because that was a disaster, and it just killed the brand. It was the one thing that took from the massive success that they had with the 360 to the complete abysmal failure that the Xbox One had, which has just echoed down through the series consoles. And I think that the changes that Phil Spencer has made have largely been for the better for the company and for the Xbox brand. But that doesn't change, of course, all this other stuff that's happening, which you could say it's Phil Spencer. I would say it maybe partially Phil Spencer, but it's also Microsoft and the people who want to make money most of all. But anyway, I digress. I think that's all I have to say.
Okay, just a couple of things I sort of want to add on, and what you said, it definitely makes a whole lot of sense, and like you said, Microsoft's not the only company that's doing this, other companies are doing it, but it does make sense that they would fire these people just so they can, offshore all the work to other countries. And I definitely agree with you in the mindset of what the people who are being hired, they're not doing anything wrong, but the companies, they really should be taking care of the people locally before they, branch out externally. Because, if you've got people here who are available and willing to work, why would you turn them down just because you can get cheaper labor? These people are probably being paid much less, so in a sense, they're also probably having to do more work for less money.
Well, typically their cost of living is a lot lower than ours, like significantly so. Like, they can get by on, I think, sometimes like half the income that we can get by on.
Okay.
And so, I mean, it's not like, China, where it's actually like basically slave labor in the factories where they're getting paid essentially pennies. But the amount of money that they need to live in places like the Philippines is significantly lower than what we need.
Okay. Okay, then. Well, that's not as bad as I would have thought. But still, I definitely still agree with your sentiment where, if you've got people here willing to do the work, why not give them the jobs instead? And thinking about it now, I guess this is, you mentioned it, not just necessarily a Phil Spencer thing. And I guess I kind of would agree with that because it does seem like as a whole, Microsoft kind of is leading into that direction as far as giving employment to cheaper solutions, I guess you could say, because I know that in several departments outside of Xbox, they had layoffs which they were replacing with AI. So that could just be them as a whole just trying to, cut costs as much as possible, which it's just with the AI, that's just another thing, and that's possibly worse than just offshoring work, because at least there are still people working, whereas with AI you're just using that instead. But yeah, this whole situation just definitely stinks.
Yep, agreed. All right, you want to talk about actually, well, I guess we might as well continue on since it's part of the same topic, more or less. Some cancellations that happened related to these layoffs, which includes, first of all, a title that had been announced a long time ago but never had any real like gameplay or anything, or even like a real clear idea of what the game was going to be, called Everwild from Rare, and that's been canceled. But more surprisingly, Perfect Dark, which we saw a concept, well, not like just a concept trailer, so we saw what we thought was gameplay. May have just been a tech demo, we don't really know for sure, but that one got canceled as well. And the studio, the initiative, as previously mentioned, got shut down. So I know that there was also like an unannounced MMO that had been worked on since 2018 that got canceled. I'm not sure if there were any other games. I know that there's like, related to the layoffs, there was layoffs in all sorts of different studios across the board. So it wasn't just those. I think the initiative, though, was the only one that actually got closed of those studios. So anyway, what are your thoughts on these cancellations?
This has really been disappointing, to say the least. I mean, of course, we don't really know much about Everwild, but the fact that it was a new original IP, it was something different at least. So, I think the fact that, a studio that was going to start something new and original, having that shut down is disappointing, because something that could have been good, could have been something that was different and everything. Having that shut down is definitely a disappointment. For me, with Perfect Dark reboot, I'm a combination of disappointed but also slightly relieved in a sense, because it's definitely been a long time since we've had anything Perfect Dark related, and I really would have been interested in seeing what happens. And so because of that, it's definitely sad, because this is also a case where a dormant IP gets revived after a long time. And whenever you see that nowadays with franchises and IPs, it's just so refreshing, because especially if it's something that fans have wanted, a new game in a series or something like that, having that happen is great and gets people who haven't played the older games interested in the franchise, and they can give it a shot. And if they play the game, they say, hey, this is cool, I want to go back and play the older games. And so we've seen this happen before. I mean, for one of the things, for example, Metroid, that was a franchise that was dormant, and after, well, I mean, I guess technically after Samus Returns that sort of got things revitalized, but only after, I guess you could say, Prime Remastered and Dread, that really got people interested in the franchise to the point where they're like, all right, yeah, we're going to make a whole new game in the future. And of course, people are really interested in the older games. So like, that's one example. And then, other examples of, oh gosh, I can't, it was at the tip of my tongue. There was another game that got remastered recently. And I think this was from like on Sony's side, but I can't remember what it was. But essentially, that game will enable other people who are new to the series and the franchise to want to go back and play the older games, and so that could lead to a possible revival of the series. So this was a perfect chance for Perfect Dark to do that same thing, where if the game comes out, if the game is good, if people like it, if it sells well, people are going to play more. So they're going to say, all right, we want to go back and play the older games. Now, of course, unfortunately, it's pretty much only locked to, unless of course you either buy an N64 or emulates, you're pretty much locked to the Xbox console just because of Rare Replay being only on there.
Right.
But it would still get people interested in playing the older games, one way or another. So this was that shot, and it was a miss, unfortunately. And it's really just disappointing because I really had an interest in it. Now, I'm kind of relieved, though, in the sense that I was still skeptical, even though I was interested. I some of the gameplay mechanics and changes, I felt like, I don't know, it felt too much of a divergence in a sense from the older games. So I was like, I don't know how this is going to turn out. But still, despite that, having the game being canceled and, having the whole studio, shut down is just a big disappointment, and it's like, what was going on there that Microsoft said, we're completely pulling the plug? I mean,
yeah,
it really just, unlike with layoffs where, people are going to be replaced by people overseas, this is just like, yeah, we're just halting it completely.
Yeah.
Which is a huge different ball game altogether. And I mean, even in the article that you sent me, mentioned how who was it? Greg Mails, guy who worked at Rare for 35 years. He recently left the company, which, after the cancellation of Everwild. And so, when if people who have, been committed to the company for decades, are also in, high positions of, influence and leadership. I mean, he wasn't necessarily in a leadership position, but he definitely had a lot of impact in the games. If someone like that is leaving, it shows that there's something going on in your company that people are just fed up with. So it's really just disappointing that this is happening. I mean, also, actually, as also in that same article, it said hasn't necessarily been confirmed, but executive producer Louise O'Connor, who also has been working at Rare for a long time, she also is leaving as well. So people are not happy with the cancellations. People are not happy with what's going on right now with layoffs, and it's really just a question of what are you doing, Microsoft? What are you doing? Why are you doing this? I guess you could say, when this is happening. Now, I'm hoping in a sense that this sort of, in a way, creates opportunity for these people, hoping they get back on their feet. But I'm hoping that they also get to do something like Sandfall Interactive did, where they went and made Expedition 33. So if these people can come together, make their own game, and then just have that game be successful, have people love it, have it be a great game, if they can just, sort of, show it off and say, look what you did, Microsoft. We were going to make a game like this. You canceled our project. You terminated us, but we have gone and we've made a game that is great. People love it. If they can do the same thing, that would be great. Just because these big AAA studios, I guess just big corporations in general, it's true that they just don't care about the people that are hired. They're really just essentially just a name, and I mean, even then, that's more than what they probably consider the people. But the fact that people who have put in so much effort are being treated this way, it's just disappointing, to say the least. So it's just another shame there, and it's just a huge disappointment. I mean, I guess I'll just sort of add in as if I don't know. Yeah, this is just probably one of the worst parts of this recent news with Xbox. I guess that's all I got.
So I'm going to take a bit of a different perspective on this, and not because I'm pro Microsoft or pro, laying people off and all this other stuff. Obviously, I'm not in favor of any of that. But when it comes to like Everwild being canceled, we've had nothing about that game. We had a concept trailer which didn't show any sort of gameplay, didn't give any indication of what kind of game it was going to be. We've known nothing about it apart from the title and the little visual style or whatever. I mean, that was the extent of what we had for that game, and that was it. And so this being canceled, I think it makes a whole lot of sense, because what did they have? Now, if they actually had a real project, if they actually had if they had actually settled on a real concept and they had made some significant progress on it, then okay. But this game's been in development in some form for about a decade or longer. That's a long time to be working on a game and not have anything to show for it. And so from that standpoint, I definitely understand why it would be canceled. But of course, if there was more to it and there actually was like a real game actually actively being worked on and was coming along nicely, then I would definitely be more irritated, because obviously we haven't seen really anything from Rare in a long time. Now, with this thing about Perfect Dark, so I had forgotten a bit about this because there had been news about this in the past, and I think a lot of this was either outside of our discussion or even before our discussion. The Initiative is a studio that's had problems for a long time. Like all sorts of problems between like constant turnover and just various issues with actually developing games. I mean, as it is with this Perfect Dark stuff, this what we saw was after Crystal Dynamics came on to help them with the project. Before, I mean, they didn't, as far as we can tell, they didn't actually have anything. Or if they did, it wasn't anything good enough. Now, personally, of course, when I saw the gameplay that we saw last year, assuming that was real gameplay, I thought it looked pretty good. I was very interested. But someone else pointed out to me, and this person's not an Xbox fan at all, even though he has an Xbox. He's very much a PlayStation guy more than anything else. But he pointed out, with all the problems they've been having over the years, all the money they've sunk into this, we don't even know for sure if what we saw was actually real gameplay and not just a tech demo. We have no idea if what we saw was even like real, or if the game was anywhere near as far along as they were making it out to be, because I don't think it was that long ago that Crystal Dynamics came on and was helping with this. I feel like that was maybe a couple of years ago. It may have even been less than that. And it's very possible that this was like kind of a situation similar to what we've seen sometimes from CD Projekt Red, for example, with The Witcher 3 or Cyberpunk 2077, where they've shown something off that it's like, oh, this looks amazing, and then then the product actually releases and it's unfinished and needs a lot of work before it actually becomes good. And granted, I mean, at least in the case of CD Projekt Red, they've ultimately delivered on what they promised. It just took them longer than the launch period. And I mean, this is one of those situations where it's really hard for me to be 100% on one side or the other because we don't know the whole story. We don't know how far along it was. Now, if it was actually like really close to being done, then I'm pissed about it. I would be pretty pissed if I found out that the game was basically almost completely done and they just canceled it last minute. But if this game really was not really anywhere and basically all we had was that tech demo, I mean what we find out that was really just a tech demo and that the game was still having a bunch of problems, that they hadn't actually gotten anywhere with it, then I would be less upset, because then, as much as I would love to see the IP revived, at least the reasoning would make a little bit more sense. I mean, I'm glad that at least, like, Nintendo hasn't taken that approach with some of their stuff, because, you know, Metroid Prime 4 was in development hell for a long time, and sure enough, despite all the problems they had with the initial team that was making it, they ultimately went back to Retro, and Retro seems to be delivering. From everything we've seen, it looks fantastic. It looks like it's going to be great, and will maintain that quality standard. It doesn't even have to be as good as the first Metroid Prime. As long as it's still good, that's fine. That's good enough. People will be happy with it. Plus, of course, I mean, 120 frames per second. Assuming that's not frame generation, in which case I would just be like, why? But I think theoretically, because the fact that they could get a solid 60 on the original Switch for Metroid Prime Remastered, while looking as good as it did, I think Retro can pull off actual 120 frames per second. And I hope that they don't prove me wrong on that front. So, but either way, I mean, regardless of any of this, all of it sucks. It sucks that these studios are getting shut down. It sucks that these projects are being canceled. But I'm going to say this. Any of you Sony guys out there who are saying fire Phil Spencer because of this, why don't you keep that same energy when it comes to all of these examples of Sony shutting down studios too? I mean, or, you know, they shut down studios. They've canceled a ton of games in the past year. And most of these Sony guys, like even ones that are not necessarily fanboys, you know, they'll quickly jump at fire Phil Spencer, but then they won't say anything when it comes to all of these games that are being canceled by Sony and studios that are being shut down. Just keep the same energy. Like, if you legitimately think these people should be fired, keep that energy across the board. Don't just say it for Phil Spencer because you dislike Xbox. He's like, I've never owned an Xbox. I don't want to defend Xbox, but I'm just so tired of people not being able to be consistent on the matter. You know, like even when I have some struggles there, at least I try to be honest about it and say, like, you know, I don't know entirely how I feel about this, and sometimes I try to give the benefit of the doubt more than I would otherwise. But I mean, I think I typically do it for everybody. I typically try to give them more the benefit of the doubt because that's just kind of the way that I think about things, whether it's middle child syndrome or, you know, what have you. It's just I try to give people the benefit of the doubt, even companies that don't deserve it. I'm probably not going to be doing that so much with Nintendo when it comes to our discussion about them getting sued, but yeah. Even still, everybody, keep your energy consistent. Be consistent on your positions. If you don't like something, say, I don't like this, and, you know, be honest about your bias instead of trying to pretend that you're neutral and then, you know, constantly coming down on one side but not on the other. Anyway, that's all I have.
Stuff.
All right, you want to talk about Nintendo getting sued?
All right. So, Nintendo is being sued by the Brazilian government. Well, I guess specifically um, Brazil's Consumer Protection Agency, who is suing Nintendo because of the fact that Nintendo bricks your console if you try to run unauthorized games on there. And this is, of course, if you're talking about homebrew or if you're using the MIG switch to play your games on there. And so as a result of that, because of the fact that they will brick your console if you do that, they're saying that this is, as it says here, corporate overreach, and because of also the end user license agreement, which gives Nintendo the freedom to brick your Switch too. They definitely the Institute of Consumer Protection over there definitely disagrees with that. And so the crazy thing also is because there is no representative in Brazil, the country has to speak to Nintendo of America to actually have someone to talk to. And so according to this here in Nintendo Wire, what did it say here? It's they've I don't think they've received a so there's definitely no formal representation there, and they're waiting to hear back from they're still waiting back to hear back from Nintendo regarding this, and it's definitely just interesting overall with some of the stuff going on here. And hopefully we'll get something new. Hopefully we'll have some good news on consumer end. But I think there are also a couple other countries that this type of thing violates in the same sense as Brazil. But I don't think I see specifically where.
Yeah, I think I've heard some stuff about Europe being one of those areas.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing some stuff about that a while ago. Disconnected from Nintendo, but yeah.
But yeah, that is pretty much the bulk of the matter. Your thoughts?
Well, I hope Nintendo loses and loses big. Now, I don't think that necessarily... I don't know exactly how it would work out from the standpoint of how they would lose, but if Brazil can win in some way over this, it could very well start to set a precedent that could ultimately impact other countries in a positive direction, because this is inexcusable for Nintendo. It is. I mean, they're able to, and they do intentionally brick people's systems. And it's not even necessarily that people are using them in an illegal manner. I mean, using the MIG switch, yes, if they're distributing games, if they're copying games and then distributing them, stuff like that, it's like, okay. If they're hacking the system, yeah, okay, I understand. But even then, people purchase the hardware. They already gave Nintendo the money. Nintendo should not have any right to do anything with the hardware when people use it however they choose to use it. It's... especially because with the MIG switch thing, like, not everybody who is using the MIG switch is using it to pirate games. Now, yes, obviously there are some people who are doing that, but there are plenty of people who legitimately all they do with the MIG switch is they just create backups of the games that they own so that they can have like all of their physical games in a digital form on their Switch without having to buy digital copies. And so it's like, okay, they own the game, they pay for the game, they're not distributing it, they're just using it for their personal Switch. That's it. And they're getting banned. Their hardware is turning to a brick and is unusable. And I'm getting so tired of all these things that Nintendo's doing that's anti-consumer. Now, yes, I bought the Switch too. I have a little bit of buyer's remorse, and unfortunately, I'm just kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, mostly because of the fact that I don't want to get rid of it and then ultimately have to buy another one down the line when I want to play the games. Yes, of course, I could technically not buy one period and I just wouldn't be able to play the games, or because I'm not going to pirate them. I just don't do that. You know, if I can purchase a game, I will purchase it. That is, if I can purchase it to where the developers, you know, when it's not going through a scalper. If I have to go through a scalper, I don't have as much of an issue with downloading the games, because it's like, if there's no way for me to buy it legitimately for a price that makes sense, then yeah, I'm more willing to do that, because I'm not going to spend $400 so that I can get, you know, the Xenosaga trilogy. I'm sorry, it's not worth it to me. It's like, I'll download them. They don't give me another way to buy them, so, and the developer doesn't get any money out of it. It's like, hey, you want me to buy these games? Release a remaster trilogy. Put it on PC, put it on Switch, you know, everywhere else, whatever. I will happily buy it. Happily. I would even be willing to spend $60 for the trilogy. It's a whole $60. No, but in all seriousness, it's just like, Nintendo needs to stop getting away with this crap, and people need to stop defending everything that they're doing. And I'm fed up with it. I mean, as it is with these the game key cards that they're doing for the Switch 2. I'm probably not going to buy a single one of those. If it doesn't have the full game on the cartridge, I'm not going to buy a physical copy, which is sad for me because I've always been such a fan of physical, but if the game's not even on the cartridge, then what's the point? It's just completely pointless. And yeah, I did buy the Metal Gear Solid HD collection on Switch because of the fact, or the Master Collection, because of the fact that it was $20. And that's more or less the game key card kind of situation. So, but that one, at least, I don't feel like it's me getting ripped off, you know, where if I'm spending if I'm spending a small amount, I don't mind that as much, but I'm not going to spend full price on a game that doesn't have even part of the game on the cartridge. That's completely pointless to me. At that point, I might as well just get a digital game if I really want to play it. And even then, I don't know. I'm irritated. And if Nintendo would just start putting their games on PC, I wouldn't buy a Nintendo console again ever. And as it stands, the Switch 2 is going to be my last Nintendo console. I can't keep supporting this stuff, especially because PC is so much better. The Steam Deck is so much better. And I'm not even talking about from a power standpoint. I'm just talking about from being pro-consumer. It's like, we get treated so much better on PC than they do on console. And it's not even a competition. It's like, you can't compete between the two because we have it so much better from that standpoint. And you can have all your exclusives, but you don't have any freedom. You are locked down to a system where they will keep doing stuff to screw you over and over and over. And if you don't fight back, you're just going to have to keep taking it until they get to the point that Nintendo is at, where they are so arrogant and so supported by so many people that they just refuse to do anything that's actually good for the customer. Anyway, I don't know. I'm really, like, if Nintendo didn't make such great games, I probably would just get rid of my Switch 2. And if there was a way that I knew that I could just hack my Switch 2 so that I could get those performance improvements that I want on the games I want, and I wouldn't pirate any games, just play the games I already own, maybe even buy some games just to get better performance by hacking it, I would probably do that. But unfortunately, right now, we're not at a spot where that's even really possible yet. And I'm not willing to, risk getting my account banned and losing access to all the games that I've already purchased just because of Nintendo being stupid. So anyway, I'm done.
This situation is really just interesting because it's in a region where, sure, it's a country against Nintendo per se, since it's, a consumer rights protection agency, but at the same time, it's a country that actually has no direct representation. So it's really interesting to see like what happens in that case, because I mean, will Nintendo, yield to Brazil's demands? Will they just decide you don't want to, agree with our draconian ways? We'll just pull out completely and stop selling our products in your country, and we'll just say that's, and it's interesting to see what happens there. And I kind of hope that sets a precedent for other countries to follow suit, but at the same time, I'm not betting on it. I mean, like you said, Europe is, and of course only certain countries in Europe, but I mean, technically I feel like Europe as a whole, because they have a lot of consumer rights over there that we unfortunately don't have over here. But they do have a lot of consumers' rights, especially, with digital stuff.
Yeah.
So, I'm hoping that it sets a spark over there, since they, actually have their representation under Nintendo of Europe. But because of the fact that Brazil, doesn't have that, I don't know how that's going to play out as a result. So, I mean, of course, I feel like in a sense, this is also another, I mean, if Nintendo sort of loses the case and has to pay, I just wonder what that means moving forward as far as like how they'll sell games over there. But as a whole, it kind of reminds me in a sense of, I mean, this is a different country, but it reminds me of how when Akira Toriyama passed away, and people were live streaming there was like public presentations of Dragon Ball Super episodes being played out, and Toei Animation was sending a cease and desist, saying like, hey, you're not allowed to do this. And like the Mexican government said, yeah, no, we love Dragon Ball over here so much, we're gonna allow this to happen. So like it kind of reminds me of that. And so I'm hoping that Brazil is able to do something kind of like that, where they can just stand up to Nintendo and just say, no, what you're doing is wrong here, and we're not going to allow you to bully the consumers here around. And, I hope they don't back down. I hope they're able to put up a fight. I hope that Nintendo of America doesn't try to play games, especially if they're, I don't know if they're going to act as a mediator between them and Nintendo of Japan, or if they're just going to directly handle the situation. But I'm hoping that they don't try to drag things out, and as far as, especially with trying to either get people refunded or to have their switches unbanned. Because like you said, if you buy the product, as long as you're not doing anything online that impacts people, or if you're trying to just like directly do something on the online eShop that's fishy, you should be able to do with whatever you want with your console, whether it's through like software mods, hardware mods, whatever, because you bought it. You should be able to do with it whatever you want. I definitely am in the same boat where I definitely disagree with Nintendo. And I mean, granted, I've had a long lasting disdain for Nintendo that's just progressively gotten worse and worse over the years, and I'm currently at the point where even if Nintendo puts their games on PC, I won't buy it, just because I just feel like I am so against them that I don't even want one penny contributing to what they do as far as like how they handle people on multiple aspects. So it's like, I just can't play the games. And unfortunately, it's even to the point where I can't even I'm so embittered that I can't even enjoy the games anymore either, because I mean, I have long been known as being the Metroid fanboy, but it's gotten to the point where I won't even be able to enjoy Metroid Prime 4. Like, to the point where even though Amazon, as Amazon has done for me multiple times, canceled my pre-order, I'm not even gonna get the game. Like, that's essentially where I am right now, because I can't even enjoy the games because I'm just that embittered against Nintendo because of what they do. I mean, maybe down the line, maybe I could buy a used copy so that way they wouldn't get my money. But I'm just like, I don't even think I'll even do that, just because I don't think I could enjoy the game, because it's just like, ugh, this was made by Nintendo, and I'm just like so mad at them
Well,
right
here,
now.
what you can do to help yourself get past that is see it as you're not supporting Nintendo, you're supporting Retro Studios and the fact that they finally made Metroid Prime 4. Even if that's the last game you ever buy. Don't see it as supporting Nintendo, see it as supporting the studio, especially because if the game bombs, I could see them being shut down. But I mean, like, I understand and I
I mean,
respect it. Like, I'm so back and forth on that, because I really truly despise what Nintendo's been doing. But the big problem I have when it comes to all this is that I also morally am not okay with piracy. And I'm not saying that you are. I mean, it's like, I want to play some of these games, but I'm not okay with pirating. And while I do believe that there is validity to the argument that if you don't own the game when you purchase it, then piracy isn't stealing. At the same time, I also morally can't get past the thought of it being theft. And I can't get past that. It's a personal conviction thing that I can't do that in good conscience. And once again, I know you're not saying that you were going to do that. You're saying you're not going to play the games, period. I'm saying I still want to play at least some of these games. And that may change. There may be games where I'm just like, I'm not interested. Like, I'm not getting Donkey Kong, but it's not because of how much I despise Nintendo right now. It's because I'm just not interested in the game. But, something like a new 3D Mario, I think I would have a hard time saying no to that, because I enjoy the 3D Mario games. Zelda, I'm kind of back and forth on, honestly, at this point, because I'm not really sure what they're going to do next, and whether or not it would be something that would actually draw me in at this point. Since I'm a little burnt out on what they provided, apart from, getting some of the older classics. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no,
I just had thoughts.
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like I could probably still go back and play older games, especially the ones that I grew up with, but just moving forward, anything new, I just know that I wouldn't be able to enjoy as much as I would like. And I mean, even before the latest stuff that has happened, Metroid was the only thing that they had me on. Like, they had me dead to rights, essentially, because they're like, if it was Metroid, they were guaranteed to have my money. Like, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like, essentially they had a direct line to my bank account, essentially.
Yeah.
But, after everything, it's just like, oh, like, I have to. It's essentially just me, like, I'm very sad about what I have to do. I don't know if I have the strength to do it. And then, I just have to go ahead and pull the trigger and, just cut my ties, essentially. But I mean, if people want to still go ahead and play, I'm not against it. It's just me personally, I just can't enjoy the games, or like I'm not in
Yeah.
the state where I can enjoy the games at all, just because I just don't have taste for it. I mean, back when I think, well, this wasn't the same situation, but there was something that was happening around, and I mean, as much as it might have, I don't think it was the $7 price tag, but whatever it was that was going around before Tears of the Kingdom, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get Tears of the Kingdom because I enjoyed Breath of the Wild so much. And then I was just like, whatever happens, and I was thinking, I don't even care at this point about it one way or another. I just don't have a taste right now.
Right.
And that sort of like stuck with me. And it's kind of like this thing where I'm just completely apathetic to whatever happens one way or another, because it's just like, yeah, this game is coming, and I know I enjoyed it before, but like, I just can't enjoy it now. But you know, if Nintendo gets humbled in a big way, to the point where, you know, they start backtracking on things that they've done, and especially if they allow consumers to have more pro-consumer rights, then, you know, who's to say that spark might shine again, and I might be the Metroid fanboy reborn. So who knows what will happen. But, you know, at the end of the day, though, I do hope that Brazil comes through. I hope they win big, and I hope that this sets a precedent for other countries, and that it, you know, spreads like a wildfire to the point where even if you say this smaller country, you know, who Nintendo doesn't have to listen to them. If a larger countries get involved, though, then, you know, the Nintendo can't necessarily back down. And if it gets to the point where, I mean, say through some legislation here, you know, consumers over here get more digital rights, you know, then maybe through that, through, I guess, proxy, then that would kind of push, you know, against Nintendo. We would have some pushback over here as well. Not saying it's going to happen, at least not anytime soon, but maybe down the road. But that's all that I have to say on the matter.
Yeah, I think, though, one of the things that, you know, I've thought about these countries, especially in Europe, where, you know, they have better consumer protection laws. They also have draconian speech laws that are basically straight out of 1984, where it's just like you're punished for even thinking the wrong thing, essentially. But still, I hope that it goes in a positive direction. And personally, I don't think I can fully, like, I'm fully behind, and once again, this is not criticizing you by any stretch, but fully behind punishing the studios because of what Nintendo proper has done. Like, I think that I believe that Retro deserves to be, I guess you could say, compensated for putting together Metroid Prime 4. You know, especially because we saw, you know, what a great job they did with Metroid Prime Remastered. I mean, that really was a stellar version of that game. I mean, they did it really well. Like, all of us expected it was just going to be a very basic HD up-resing of the original trilogy, which we all would have been perfectly happy with. But instead, we got what was essentially like somewhere in between a remaster and a remake that still ran at 60 frames per second on the Switch. Retro did magic. You know, proper optimization on this old hardware that still looked incredible. And, you know, I want to reward them for that positive stuff. Now, in terms of Nintendo proper, like, I am not sure I will buy a second Switch 2 at all. But I mean, even with the OLED one that will inevitably come out, I'm not sure that I will buy a second Switch 2. But I mean, like, the other thing for me that I thought about is the next Xenoblade. I cannot resist that, period, because Monolith Soft has not put out a bad game. All of their games have been incredible, and I would not be surprised if we get their next game announced this year. And it's like I'm not skipping that. I'm sorry, I cannot skip that because their games are too good. They're too good. Lengthy, meaty RPGs with great gameplay, great stories, great music, just like across the board, so good. And I guess ultimately when it comes to those games, I'm not looking at it as supporting Nintendo. I'm looking at it as supporting these developers who make these great games. And that's really what it comes down to for me. Now, obviously you can continue to have whatever convictions you have. I hope you'll reconsider, at least with Metroid Prime 4, because of how much of a fanboy you are, and just try your best to put out of your mind any benefits that it gives to Nintendo and think of it as you're completing your collection. Plus, you know, Metroid Prime 4. I mean, come on. But, yeah. Anyway. That's enough of that. All right. Do you have any other thoughts or any other topics you want to discuss?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. Sounds good. So let's get into our recommendations and dissuasions. Start us off.
All right. So my first recommendation is going to be Little Kitty, Big City. And you recommended this in the past. It's definitely a very nice game. It's short and sweet, but it's still just a fun, relaxing game. It's definitely a good palate cleanser if you're going to play something that is more fast-paced, or something that is more challenging. It's something nice and slow that you can just go in, play at your leisure, and just enjoy. And it's just fun in general. So definitely recommend picking that up, giving that a shot, and it's fun. And also, I'm pretty certain it's on most, if not every platform, so
Yeah.
you shouldn't have a problem with getting that on your platform of choice. Next recommendation is going to be different, and that's going to be taste test your spicy sauces. So I've been recently, I was making a salad, and I was trying to make a buffalo ranch, and the problem is I put in a little more buffalo sauce than I would like. And now, I'm not a person who's averse to spicy foods. I mean, I used to be, but I've gotten better over the years. But I'm not necessarily looking for spicy per se. I'm not on the hunt for spicy. So when I made my, blend for my salad, I realized when I was eating it, that was a little too much spice there, so I really should have cut back on that. Now, the second day when I made the blend for my salad, it was better. It still had more than I would have preferred, but it was better. So it definitely would have helped if both times I had tasted, the blend before I put it on my salad. And so moving forward, what I'm going to be doing is just tasting it before. Now, granted, it definitely was not as bad as when I put in the chipotle powder in the refried beans instead of chili powder. So it definitely wasn't on that level of spicy. But it definitely was spicy enough that I was just like, whoa, that's a little too much there. So yeah, if you're making something spicy, definitely taste test it before you apply it, and definitely while you're still making it. Because you can always add more stuff in, but you can't take stuff out.
Right. Exactly.
So those are my recommendations.
All right. Well, of course, those are excellent recommendations. Because I didn't write it down and I just want to say it before I forget it. So I made some salsas. I redid my mango habanero as well as salsa verde yesterday. And the last time I had made salsa verde, I put a little bit of vinegar in it just to help kind of flesh out the flavor, but also makes it last longer. And it came out like perfect. Like it was the right level of spice. I roasted the tomatillos and all the veggies, and the flavor was great, had the right balance of everything. This time I put too much vinegar in it. I ended up getting some more tomatillos and adding those, and that seemed to help a lot with the balance. It's still not quite perfect, but it's better. So my recommendation is only put, if you're going to add vinegar to a salsa, only put a little bit at a time. Do like a tablespoon at a time and taste it before you add more, because if you do too much, it's harder to get it fixed. But then on a completely different note. So I didn't mention this earlier, but if you end up in a situation where your Steam Deck is not booting up and you basically just have like the white light flashing on it, where it's like, it'll like flash 3 times and then, I mean, like it'll have the fans running and everything, but the screen won't turn on, and you leave it in, it's just not turning on. If you get in that situation, you just can't get the thing to turn on. The way that I found from looking online that worked for me was to keep it on, leave it completely unplugged from power, and just let it sit until it runs out of battery. Because then when it runs out of battery, as soon as you plug it back in, it will boot up like normal. And then you'll be all set. It seems to be kind of like a weird glitch in the software, hardware, to where it thinks it doesn't have enough battery power to boot up. And so then it can't boot up, even though it actually may have enough battery power. It happened to me, like I had been playing Octopath Traveler 2, and then I turned it off, and it just kind of like hung as it was trying to turn off, and then when I was trying to get it back on, it wasn't turning on, and I know that it had like half the battery left, so I know that wasn't the problem. But yeah, once I did that, that worked. You know, I had to kind of leave it overnight, just on until it ran out of battery, and then once I plugged it in the morning, it booted right up without any problems. I didn't even have to turn on the power. I just plugged it in, and then within a couple seconds, it booted up to the main screen. So it was good. So yeah, that's my recommendation. Is just, if you come across that situation, leave it on, let the battery drain, and then plug it in after it's completely drained. And that should fix your problem.
Okay, definitely make a note of that.
All right, dissuasions.
All right, so dissuasion. Oh, I'm sorry. Just you mentioning your recommendation reminded me. So another recommendation I sort of have, and that is Steam Deck related. If you are trying to download something on your Steam Deck, and if the internet that you're connected to is usually good, and for whatever reason it's really slow, turn your Steam Deck off, and then turn it back on, and then that should speed things up, and it should be downloading right away. Because that happens while I was at my sister's house, where it normally is a whole lot faster, but for whatever reason the bit rate was only about 5 megabits per second, and I was like wondering what was going on. And even when I was close enough to the router, it was still pretty slow. But as soon as I turned it off later on and turned it back on, then it was all right. Now we're getting back into triple digit territory. Yeah. So that was much better. So definitely just want to quickly mention that. So for dissuasions, my dissuasion is going to be, if you have a drive that you think might have problems with it, or whether it's corruption or if there's something on there, don't overwrite anything yet until you're certain that you can at least recover what's on there, or at the very least, do not try to overwrite everything trying to start over from scratch, because that's a mistake that I almost made, where I thought that my drive was the issue as far as why I couldn't get my PC to boot up, and I almost was going to do a complete I was almost just going to write over everything and just like do a fresh OS installation. And then I thought, I was like, I should wait to make sure that it's not actually drive that was the issue. And it turns out that it probably wasn't the drive that was the issue. So if I had gone ahead and tried to overwrite everything on there, I would have been extremely ticked off. So definitely don't do that. Make sure that it is not the drive that's the issue before you decide to overwrite what is on there, especially if there's stuff that you want to keep.
Yeah. Yeah, the fix that I had for getting my Steam Deck functional like it is now, or I mean, the one I had for my recommendation. So I bet that probably if I had done that when I was having problems with it back in March, that probably would have fixed my problem without me having to do a factory reset. But it is what it is, and I still managed to get caught up and get past where I was in Dark Souls 2, so it all worked out in the end. But one last recommendation I forgot to mention, and that is when it comes to Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3 on PC, make sure you back up your save. Back it up externally because there's no cloud saves, and you do not want to be in a position where if something gets corrupted, or if you have to do a factory reset of something, or if any number of potential things happens, if you don't have a backup, and it should be a pretty consistent backup, you're just going to be out of luck and you're going to have to start over if you want to play. And most people will not have the patience to do that, which would be understandable. As I almost didn't do that with Dark Souls 2. I'm glad I did, ultimately, because it worked out great. But yeah, that would have been a disaster if I didn't have... Well, it was a disaster, more or less, with Dark Souls 2. It just worked out. Dark Souls 3... If I had actually lost my save, I would have just been like, okay, I'm not playing anymore. I'm done. Because, I had over 100 hours before I even started doing the DLC stuff, and I did not want to replay everything just to get back to the DLC. It's just not worth it from that standpoint. But I didn't lose much of anything. So, it worked out. But yeah, back it up. Back it up. Back it up. Even back it up multiple times if you can. Maybe even back up the same file and just rename it ever so slightly, and then you can just rename it as needed in order to replace it. And then you'll be golden. But just, yeah, make sure you back it up. Dissuasion, though. If you are using internet that has a speed of greater than 100 megabits per second, make sure you do not use a Cat5 cable. It has to be Cat5e or Cat6. If you don't know which it is, just look on the cable itself. It's printed on there. It'll tell you what kind of cable it is. Anything, if you don't have 5e or 6, you will not be able to get above 100 megabits per second. So if you're paying for gigabit internet like we were, that's a lot of internet speed to lose. Thankfully, it took less than a day for me to figure out that was the problem. But yeah, that was kind of embarrassing. But it's actually funny. So, when I was talking to the technician on the phone, he was suggesting that my cable that was going to my room was the problem. And I'm like, he's like, because sometimes you get a flat tire, and it's like, I don't think so. I don't think that's the case in this situation. And he was half right, but I was half right. It was a little bit of both, because it wasn't that cable that was the problem. It was a completely different short cable that I had put on. That was the problem. So it's like, he was right that there was a cable that was the wrong kind of cable. He was just wrong about which cable it was. So I was right that the cable that I said was fine. It was just the other one that I had never used before that was not fine. And yeah. Anyway, that's all I got for dissuasions.
Very good, very good.
All right. Well, where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel. I am Xeracon. That's IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. As before, no videos yet, at least not until I can get my PC worked out. So that's still, everything's still going to be on hold for that point, and we'll see what happens moving forward.
All right. Good stuff. All right, well, you can find me on my YouTube gaming channel at TheFrozenGamer87. No new content currently, but hopefully soon I'll be recording that Dads and Gaming interview. We're trying to figure out a time. I'm hoping to maybe get it recorded while I'm out of state. Just get it done because I have a little more freedom to do stuff like that. We'll see. Whenever I get it recorded, then I'll be able to give an estimate on when it's coming out. But the turnaround time should be pretty quick once I actually get it. It'll probably be pretty similar to what it is for the podcast itself. So that's the goal. We'll see how things go. Just kind of a wait and see. Wait till he gets back to me. So, but then otherwise, there's also the YouTube and Rumble channels for the podcast. That's on YouTube. It's at the Orange Box Podcast. On Rumble, there's no custom URL, but it is there. That goes live every Friday at 7 a.m. Central Time, barring any technical issues. This week, hopefully, God willing, everything will work out to where we won't have that problem, but there is a chance that it could end up being slightly delayed depending on how easily I can get everything uploaded. I don't think it's going to be a problem because I've used the internet at the college before and everything's gone really smoothly when I have, but I haven't done it for uploading because this is the first time since we started the podcast that I've had to do this somewhere that wasn't home. So there's that. And then, of course, there's also the audio-only version of the podcast, which goes live on every major podcast platform, or at least a lot of them, I guess, at 12 a.m. Central Time every Friday. That's up on YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Amazon Music. In fact, I'm bringing up the list right now because I can never remember where all the different places are that it's going. So Spotify, Amazon Music, Podcast Index, Listen Notes, RSS Community, Apple Podcasts, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and TuneIn. I believe that's all of them. But anyway, so yeah, there's a bunch of different platforms. You can find that 12 a.m. Central Time every Friday is when it becomes available to listen to. And yeah, so the only other thing is my YouTube cooking channel, Not Authentic But Delicious. That's YouTube at NABD Cooking. Nothing new has been put up in a while, but there's around 40 recipes on the channel, and there will be more in the future. Just YouTube has been low priority for me right now, so apart from doing the podcast each week, it just is not at the top of my importance when it comes to things that I have to do. So I believe that's everything. Actually, I guess the one last thing is that, of course, if you have any questions, comments, or want to tell us to Persona 3 ourselves, you can do that either by commenting on the video version of the podcast on YouTube or Rumble, or by sending us an email to theorangeboxpodcast@gmail.com. You can also write us on X/Twitter @theorangeboxpod. Neither one of us use it. Haven't updated anything on there in a long time, but you're welcome to write us there. I still get the emails, and I'll get back to you, or we'll read it on the show, depending on what it is. So, that should be everything. All right, last chance. Any final thoughts?
No, sir.
All right, well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I am Zeracon. We are the Orange Box Podcast, and until next time, have a happy 4th of July. Grill some burgers, eat some steaks, all that good stuff. Blow things up. Well, blow up fireworks. And keep that same energy. Orange Box Podcast out.